Alrighty, we're gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. The Planning and Zoning Commission for Monday, November 21st, 2022 at 6:32 p.m. We have a roll call. We have we have 5 commissioners, with one who has stepped out due to who will return shortly. Commissioner Fuertes has stepped out due to an item on the consent agenda that he must recuse himself from. So we're doing introduction of the agenda and the format of the hearing.
Thank you, sir. First, we'll have a call to order for each item, followed by the staff report. After that, the applicant will have their presentation. Then we'll have public comments in either support or opposition to the project. At that time, please state your name and address for the record. Be brief and to the point within a 3-minute time frame. And all comments shall be about the project with no personal attacks. Afterwards, commission and staff will have their discussion, and then the commission will vote to recommend approval as presented, approval with conditions, denial of the request, or to table the item. Afterwards, City Council will consider these rezoning cases on December the 5th. So the order of the agenda, we'll have consent agenda that has the excuse of an absence. Then we'll have approval of meeting minutes, followed by approval of a preliminary plat for Massey Oaks. This is for the basin number 3. After the consent agenda, we'll have new business with 3 zone cases. First, neighborhood services to general business for 3205 Dixie Farm Road. The second, for a zone change from GB to GC for property along Old Chocolate Bayou. And then the third, for a zone change from GB to R4 for property that is at the 4 corners of the Westwood Village subdivision. And after that, we'll have commission input and discussion about an upcoming planned development located at the southwest corner of Beltway 8 and 288. Sure, back to you for the consent agenda.
Thank you very much. This is now the point in time where we have the consent agenda. They're considered to be routine and require little or no deliberation. These items will be enacted, approved by one motion unless a commissioner requests a separate action on an item in which the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered by a separate action. Approval of the consent agenda enacts the items of legislation. So I'll read the 3 consent agenda items here, and then we'll vote on them in one motion. Item number A, consideration possible action, excuse absence of Commissioner Andrew Earls from the November 7th, 2022 meeting. Item B, consideration and possible action, approval of the minutes. Approval of the Planning and Zoning regular meeting minutes from November 7th, 2022. Commissioner Fuertes wanted to note that in the minutes, his comments regarding the gas stations being mostly found on hard corners, as that particular item was not found on a hard corner. He wanted that included in the minutes going forward. Item number C, consideration and possible action, plat 22-109, preliminary plat of Massey Oaks Basin 3, Phase 2. There will be a request by Andrew Lang of BGE, the applicant, on behalf of Massey Oaks Development LP owner for approval of the preliminary plat of Massey Oaks Basin 3, creating 1 restricted reserve on plus or minus 19.67 acres of land located south of the old Massey Ranch Road and east of Harkey Road. General location south of old Massey Ranch Road and east of Harkey Road. Do I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Show motion carries 5-0. Welcome back, Commissioner Fuertes. Item number 6, new business. Consideration and possible action, zone change application, zone 22-27. It's a public hearing request by GMS Connects LLC, applicant on behalf of G&G Partners Development owner for approval of a zone change from Neighborhood Services NS District to General Business Retail GB District on approximately 9.6135 acres of land. General location being 3205 Dixie Farm Road. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Staff report?
Thank you. So as mentioned, this is a zone change for property at 3205 Dixie Farm Road. The request is to go from neighborhood services to general business. And the future land use map shows this area as retail offices and services. So here you can see the aerial and zoning map. It's got large development to the north and to the west with Walmart and Home Depot. Then there is some R1 zone property to the south and some R3 and R4 zone property around the other edge on the backside of the property. As you can see on the future land use map, the first few parcels coming along Dixie Farm Road were all within the retail offices and services use category, which is appropriate for or suggests appropriateness for commercial development. So let's talk about the history of the property. There was a home developed in 1963. Then many years later, in 2017, a zone change request for R1 to GB went before council. And at council's adoption, they lessened the zoning to neighborhood services. There was also a request that was approved for a conditional use permit for assisted living in 2020, but that CUP has since expired. So as mentioned, there's a Walmart, Home Depot, and a variety of either large lot or standard R3 or R4 lot single-family residences surrounding the property. And it does have a pipeline that cuts through the back, probably quarter of the acreage. Here's a view of the property from Dixie Farm Road. This is another view looking the opposite way along Dixie Farm Road. And this is looking across, looking at the property from across the street of Dixie Farm Road. And this is our conformity table. It's generally showing that that the property is within an allowed area of the comprehensive plan. The Dixie Farm meets the thoroughfare plan and is of sufficient width. The property will need to be platted, but that's not something that necessarily should hold zoning of the property back. And then there are access to utilities, both water and sewer, along Dixie Farm Road. The approval criteria from the Unified Development Code is on the screen. It shows that the proposed zone change meets the conformity for the criteria. And with that, we find that this request is consistent with the future land use designation and is compatible with the surrounding uses, and that staff recommends approval of the proposed change from neighborhood services to general business.
Conclude staff presentation? Conclude the staff presentation?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is the applicant here for, okay. If you'd just state your name and there you go.
Chris Hurd, 215 East Galveston, Lake City. I am representing the client, and essentially this is more of a procedural change for us. Instead of coming back and renewing the CUP, we thought it would be a better use of both City of Pearland and our time to do a full zone change at this time as opposed to going back to the CUP. So, and other than that, he gave a pretty good history on that. It's got a fairly historical timeline. So any questions specific?
Yeah, well, if we do, we'll certainly ask them. Thank you. Is there, let's see, this is item 22. Let me make sure I've got item 3. I don't think I have this one as any, is there anyone here wishing to speak for or against this item? Going once, going twice, all right. No one here wishing to speak for that item. We'll go to staff, commissioners, applicant discussion. Do,
No, that's the next one.
Next one.
That's the next one.
sorry. Commissioners, anyone have any?
Yeah, the only thing that I want to add is the plan still to go back with an assisted living plan in this area?
At this time, yes, but the market conditions have changed, so we won't formalize that until after we get through this process.
Commissioner Fuertes? Anything? Commissioner Boswell, Commissioner Earls? You know, a couple of things I'd say just personally is, you know, it went back to council, or it went to council in 2017. It's in our site history to rezone from single-family R1 at the time to GB. The staff was not, council was not, nor was staff in favor of it. And they did zone it to neighborhood services. And you know, for me personally, it's a little difficult for me to think, well, the directive from council was neighborhood services, and there was a reason for that at the time. And now we are going to GB, and as you mentioned, you know, the thought is we might do that. Now we might do assisted living instead of we are doing, and so, you know, for me personally, GB is, there's a laundry list of things that could go into GB. And some of those items might not be friendly to the neighbors, whereas neighborhood services is a little more restrictive. So me personally, I would want to continue with council's directive for a 2017 noted to adopt, when they noted to adopt a neighborhood services, just because you know, the community and the area around it. You know, when this was brought, the first time we had a large number of people that came and spoke, and I believe one of the gentlemen who was adjacent to this property may not be around anymore, and so maybe that's where this has changed. But you know, I would feel myself personally more comfortable with it staying neighborhood services, and so you know, if the intent is to change it to GB, my vote when we get to that would be to keep it neighborhood services. So. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to add?
I was okay with the possible change. I did think about what you said about it being a CUP and coming back to getting that renewed. But to say you don't know what the future holds and it depends on the market, that doesn't sit well with me. Because if we're gonna do a zone change, like we're changing the dirt, and I would want to know what the future could hold for that versus is dependent upon the market. And if you're able to get a CUP and get what you need out of that, I don't see the need for a general business change to just coincide with the market and you don't even know what that's gonna be.
I can address that.
If you,
That's a property owners.
okay, if you'll just state your name.
Yeah, Anthony Giuliani, I own the property. We have a contract for the memory care. It's under contract, but, you know, Chris asked me, we've had lots of contracts. The intention is to put the same type of memory care that was there before. I think it's gonna happen, but, you know, I've been told so many different things that, you know, I didn't want to commit to something and it not happen. But the intention is the same person that was buying it before is going to do it. He couldn't get the financing before. Now he's saying he's going to get the financing. He asked me to go forward and get the GB. He paid for one cup already. I told him I would pay for this here because it would help potentially on other parts of the property. And so that's what's driving the process. But I do have a contract for the same memory care that was going to be built in 17. Whether it happens, I can't guarantee you that.
And you spoke to the neighboring property owners about this
Yeah,
process?
the people that were opposed, or the person that they were referring to, the son, I spoke to him before and told him we'd be coming for GB, and he said he was fine with it, but he's not here tonight, so I don't want to speak for him. This was, 4 or 5 months ago when I talked to him.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
So the goal is not a shopping center like the sign says in the picture. You're going with an assisted living facility.
Well, the whole property is going to have different uses. The back 6 is going to be a memory care, and then we're trying to market that leaves the front of the property, which we're trying to market that.
So multiple facilities on that property.
Member Earls, just to reiterate what you all have been told in the past, the vote on a zone change is voting the dirt. Whether it be the sign that's on it for retail or whether it be memory care, doesn't matter. What matters is all the potential uses
Sure.
in that zoning category could now be allowed on that site
For general
if you
business.
vote for that zone change.
For me, the layout of the land behind a Home Depot, you're not going to get a big use behind there, other than something like an assisted living. You're not going to get a general business use other than that. Home Depot blocks it. I visualize this one just like the one to the right or northeast of it, where the Taglia is. I think you're gonna, I'm assuming you're saying you're gonna put a shopping center up front. I read in the notes a daycare, a shopping center, a couple of things I think you mentioned in their restaurant. And that back makes perfect sense. I mean, and that's for that neighborhood behind it, that buffer of that pipeline easement, you're not going to get anything between there. Crossing those pipeline easements, and I know that pipeline easements, there's multiple pipelines. I'm very comfortable with an assisted living or a memory care or a senior facility. Very comfortable with those with a shopping center up front. I mean, that's Dixie Farm.
Anyone else? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the rezone from neighborhood services to GB on this property, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion fails 1-5. All right, item number 2, consideration of possible action, zone change application, zone 22-28. It's a public hearing, a request by GMS Connects LLC, applicant on behalf of Pham Tilly Trang, owner, for approval of a zone change from general business retail GB district to general commercial GC district on approximately 4.5099 acres, to wit, general location east of Old Chocolate Bayou Road, south of Broadway Street. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, staff.
Chair, let me introduce Florence Buaku to present the staff report. Florence, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. The request before you is a zone change from general business to general commercial on approximately 4.5 acres of land. This is located east of Old Chocolate Bayou and south of Broadway Street. The future land use is retail, offices, and services, and we did send out notification letters to property owners within 200 feet of the property, and we haven't received any written comments or phone calls for or against the request. So as you can see on your screen, the property is zoned general business. It is surrounded mostly by general business zoning on 3 sides, but to the east of the property is a planned development, which is a senior living facility. The property has a future land use designation of retail, offices, and services, and it's surrounded by a similar future land use on all 4 sides. That future land use does not support the proposed zone change. Just to give a brief history of the property, it was annexed into the city in 1997. It's never been developed and it's never been platted. And so just a little more detail about what is happening around the subject property. To the north is a doggy daycare, and then to the east, as I mentioned earlier, is the senior living facility. It's a multi-family facility. And then to the south, there are medical offices, and there's a single family home to the north, almost across from the side. This is a view from Old Chocolate Bayou. What you see in the background is the doggy daycare that I mentioned earlier. And this is another view also from Old Chocolate Bayou, looking towards the south of the property. And so in terms of conformity, staff did look at conformity with basic regulations and documents within the city. The first one is the comprehensive plan and the future land use plan. Staff determined that the proposed zone change is not consistent with the future land use of the site, which is the retail, offices, and services. That tends to support less intense zoning districts such as the neighborhood service district, the office professional, and the general business district. So in terms of that, it does not support the proposed zone change. Then the property is located along Old Chocolate Bayou, which is designated local street. It's a narrow two-way street, one way in each direction. And the applicant is proposing GC to be able to build an office warehouse. Staff believes that that increase in truck traffic is a more intense use, and the local road may not be able to support that more intense use. The property has never been platted. It will be platted before it is developed. And currently, there are some utilities along Old Chocolate Bayou. There's a water line, but again, there is no gravity sewer line to support the proposed development. And then staff has also reviewed this request based on the criteria outlined in the Unified Development Code for approval of zone changes. The first one I mentioned earlier is conformity with the comprehensive plan and the future land use plan, and the retail offices and services land use designation does not support the general commercial zoning district that is being proposed. And the second criteria, which looks to find out if the proposed zone change is consistent with applicable standards and is appropriate with immediate land uses. As shown earlier, there's a senior living facility right next to the subject property, and there's also a doggy daycare. All those are considered less intense uses, especially the senior living facility, and staff does not believe that the proposed GC zoning will be compatible. At least some of the uses within the GC zoning may not be compatible with the existing uses. And then the third criteria is if there are public utilities available to service the proposed development. As mentioned earlier, there's a water line along Old Chocolate Bayou, but there's no gravity sewer line to support the proposed development. And then for the fourth criteria, just because of the uses immediately surrounding the site, staff does not believe that it will be appropriate to rezone it to a more intense. And so based on the fact that the proposed zone change is inconsistent with the future land use and the comprehensive plan, and also concerns about the ability of Old Chocolate Valley to support the increased traffic and the more intense use, staff is recommending denial of the proposed zone change. And that concludes that.
Thank you very much. Applicant presentation. Oh,
Hi, Chris, sir. 215, Galveston, East Galveston, Lake City. So can you go ahead and put those pictures up? So I want to talk about a little bit, I know I talked to staff and when we went through this process, and I understand the condition of Old Bayou Road, or Chocolate Bayou Road, but you know, as far, and I highlighted in the staff report how many times it was listed. And again, we're talking about the dirt, not necessarily the surrounding infrastructure around it. And part of what my client is wanting to bring to this is really about small business. So there'll be 4 buildings, and I've got a site plan off it. 4 building. This is not, to go to the very last one, this is one of the projects that are done in Cypress Springs. But essentially, that's the layout for this property. So the first 3 are 10,000 square foot buildings. That's a 12,000 square foot building, and it's office warehouse. So when we talk about retail, office, and services, literally there's going to be offices. It will be like plumbing supplies, pool people that don't necessarily, they need a warehouse, they need to have a storefront, but a lot of their business is elsewhere where they're actually performing the work. And so they've done the market study. There is a value here. Right above this, if you skip over, the one that was not in the staff presentation is there's literally mini storage at Broadway and Old Chocolate Bayou, which is general commercial. So I can understand that it didn't carry down, but it is consistent with the surrounding area, especially as you're coming in off Broadway. So, per the code, 10% of the buildings have to be use of office. So 10% will be office, there'll be warehouses. And now if you want to just kind of go backwards, what they will look like, and that's again the Cypress Spring from the road, that's the other project, and then you've got the actual warehouse component, which is the next image, and then the next one will be the offices or the storefronts that will exist, so with the glass frontage, and so that's the intended use for this area, and again, the general commercial is what it makes it a use of right.
all right.
So that's it. Any questions? I'm sure you'll have.
Thank you. All right, we did have one email. This is persons wishing to speak for or against. We did have one email request or comment against the item,
I think that was, I'm sorry, too.
and then we had another one recently. Or is this?
No, that's just the one item that's for the next item, so.
Oh, okay. It says 22-31. Is that the one we're on?
No, we're on 20.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, how's that? I didn't.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I jumped ahead.
That seems to me too.
Yeah. Sorry.
So,
Too many things. Okay, 22-28, but we do have, I believe we do have, Dr. Gary Harwell, is that right? Okay, Dr. Harwell, if you'll, that wants to speak on this item, if you'll state your name, your address, and then, 3 minutes.
Yeah, I own the property immediately across the street from the proposed area. Could you put the pictures back up? Of the original pictures? My main concern is Old Chocolate Bayou is in no condition. It can barely handle road traffic now, much or less heavy traffic. Or the road is deteriorating here. I'm bringing it to your attention so you can have public works, and it's not just there, it's all the way down the road. After the last flooding, there's been a major deterioration. In my pickup, I can barely make a right-hand turn into my driveway because of the narrowness of the road and bringing larger trucks or increased traffic. In addition to that, there's a tremendous amount of poor drainage in that area. My house has flooded 3 times in the last 40 years. I've been there 42. And the ditch going down this side, I've had to personally clear it out because I couldn't get Pearland Public Works to do it. And our neighbor, this side barely drains at all. That area where the truck is basically a swamp. If this land is developed and raised, it's gonna push a flood into mine. The property, if you can go back a little further, behind our house was under development by Terry Ward. That's been taken off the market is now gonna be sold. So it's a dead project. And so this is gonna remain undeveloped. This whole area here floods. One of the reasons Cullen flooded back during the main flood was because this all backed up at this point right here for 3 days. I don't know what the condition is now, we'll find out in the next flood. But the road is in no condition right now to handle that, and I think the pictures he showed a 4-lane road there, so maybe they're gonna pick up the cost for widening it. Anything else?
Can I assist him? His wife, but I didn't get a paper to go.
Have a couple more minutes. She got 5 to 7 minutes.
She did good work, Bill. My comment is that like the Sprouts.
If you'll just state your name and who you are. Yeah.
Anyway, the traffic alone, as an example, is the Sprouts heavy truck traffic, just for the grocery trucks. One of his illustrations showed at least 2 commercial-sized semi-tractor trailers backing into as examples of potential delivery trucks. I guarantee you that road can't support it. I know you're talking about the dirt. Yeah, the dirt might support it, but it won't handle the flooding caused by the additional concrete brought in. Additionally, he commented about the storage units that are further up there. They are the L shape of the storage units that actually come in and off of, primarily off of 518. The traffic that does come in off of Old Chocolate Bayou are maybe vans at the largest as far as the size of the vehicles that go in and out of there. Even the U-Haul trucks very seldom go in that way. So, yeah, we definitely have concerns about this, not just with the flooding, but with the condition
Last
of the road.
quick comment, we didn't get notice of this until about 3 days ago, and didn't have time to bring pictures or anything, but you already got them up there.
Okay.
And
Well,
one more thing, that's not a medical unit, that is a behavioral unit, so they're dealing with children with sensory deficits and disorders and so forth. Just add that little bit in.
Okay.
And I'm a former special ed teacher, so I know the impact of the surroundings.
Ms. Harwell, if you'll do me a favor when you leave, if you'll fill out one of those
Yes,
green
I'll be
forms.
happy.
All right, just turn it in, that'd be great. Anyone else wishing to speak for? Okay, did you fill out a comment?
I did, but not for this topic.
Okay, well, if you'll fill one of those out before you leave for this particular item, then we'll get you in there.
James Hoffner, 3501 Sebago. I've driven on Old Chocolate in the past. I can support, it is in no way in a condition to support anything beyond what it's currently doing. The pictures show deterioration. I'm seeing roads all over Pearland that look like that. If the roads aren't being maintained as is, if you put heavier trucks on there, it's gonna fall apart even worse, maybe cause wrecks, maybe injure people. I don't think this is a good idea. The design, the proposed implementation looks wonderful. I like the idea of the business, but the infrastructure's not there to support it. If they wanna pay for upgrading the road and put some drainage in so that these folks' houses don't flood anymore, I'm all for that, but it should fall on to us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, staff, commission, applicant, anybody, commissioners want to speak?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So as Florence was giving her presentation, the first thing that I said out loud was, this road is terrible. Not even being able to focus on what she was saying. So I'm saying that to say, does staff have any plans for the infrastructure in that area, because I know that we are zoning the dirt. And I'm honestly okay with what he's proposing, but I do have issue with larger trucks coming there. If the road is that raggedy as is, I don't think it can take anything additional. So that's my question, like, what are we gonna do with the drainage and the road for that area? Because it's still zoned to have some type of business, which would create additional traffic even if we didn't approve the zoning. So we need to deal with the road and the drainage, and that's kind of what I wanna know.
So fortunately, we have lovely representatives from engineering
Hi.
who are
Who have their
trained
laptops.
and
Yeah, he's just smiling.
Just be glad you're not downstairs.
That's in 2 weeks and another 2 weeks.
So, it's a tough question, to be honest with you. I'm not sure, I completely agree with the comments that the road condition is not in the good condition to handle additional load. I'm not sure what legal tool we have to enforce any roadway improvements. One thing I can say, and I don't know if it addressed the drainage concern, a few years ago, city did a drainage project to take some of the stormwater from Collin back to that large detention you see on the bottom right corner. I'm not sure to what extent that solved the problem. I made a note for myself to check with our public work colleague tomorrow about the roadway condition and the drainage. I don't really have the answer you're looking for, but I will definitely look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something, or?
Sure.
Now the time, or?
Sure.
As applicants,
Still,
that would be
yeah.
at the chair's discretion.
Yes, that's fine, yes, sir.
Okay, so, I mean, and, sorry. So we talked about, in terms of, so we talked about the road in the beginning, that was brought up, and again, and I understand from the city's perspective, they can't put a condition on a rezoning, which we get that. So, but my client knows and understands that there could be some collaboration on improving that road through the permitting process. So just, I mean, we know that that's an issue and we understand that and we're willing to engage in some of those conversations. I totally understand and respect that there's no legal mechanism that binds us at this moment, but it's our intent to develop the site that's going to be appropriate for use. I mean, we're not going to put that kind of money in and then look to the city. So there'll be some discussion there that we would be open to during the permitting process. So. But again, there's no legal vehicle for us to do that at this point.
Staff,
Go ahead.
is there something per code about impervious cover? Just to give you some kind of assurances that when they develop, they won't just flood your land? Because by code, they have to address that.
Correct.
That's
So-
correct?
Right, so the pre-flood, the pre-flood conditions have to meet and be accounted for in the post-development conditions. So they can't develop and make the flooding worse. They have to account for that.
And if you want to go back to our site, we actually have laid out where the detention would reside on our site. So we've already calculated the pre and post-flood developments to retain water back. So just, I mean, so even we'll hold back more water coming in. See, all of this back here is all detention. So to address the gentleman's concern about the ditch, we're gonna, all this water is gonna flow back through here and be held here before released. So that actually would improve the situation as a whole. Especially,
I know the.
but we're not getting into engineering on zoning, so
I just want to add a very quick note here. I believe the concern the resident have is not necessary, but for this development itself is the drainage capacity of Old Chocolate Bayou, how it handles, how it conveys. Sure. So that's why I said we need to look into that. It's not something they created, it's an existing condition, so we have to look into the matter.
Sure. Permitting.
Did you have something?
For me, when I think of office warehouses, I think of Oh goodness, where is it? Kolache Factory. Behind the Kolache Factory, down the street, there's a bunch of
One of the ranch
office
roads.
warehouses. Smith Miller Ranch Road, Miller Smith, Ranch, I don't know what it is.
Smith Ranch.
They're very similar. If that's what's coming here, I think that's a great use for that area. I drive that road every day. I know you live there. The difference to me between general business and general commercial, when I looked, I think you just mentioned plumbing. That's one of the things I'd kind of highlighted. Plumbing, carpenter shop is allowed in general commercial, but not in general business. I don't think that's disruptive to that area. When I look at the storage facility, and I understand they from a driving standpoint, I'm not talking about the road, from a use standpoint. And when we say voting the dirt, that's what we're talking about, that we have to vote the dirt because the pictures we see today may not be what comes in tomorrow. So I always want to know what uses can be there. I'm more comfortable here because there's a storage facility to the north, the Sprouts that you mentioned, a doggy daycare, the medical, I pass it up every day, they're not very busy. I know across the street, until you said something, I didn't know the project's off, but it is zoned, I believe, to allow office condos. I think that's what was going to be there.
Not the same thing as a warehouse.
It isn't, but it is to me in that I think you're going to have the same amount of vehicular traffic.
I would beg to
Okay.
disagree.
We can't,
We
yeah,
can't
we
talk with
can't,
the
we can't,
citizens.
yeah, we can't dialogue, unfortunately.
And so, I'm for it. I've driven the other site multiple times. I've supported some of those businesses. Some of them, there's a church in a few of them. They're busy on the weekends, I get that. But for me, this makes sense. It makes sense from a use, it makes sense from every day when I drive this particular road. The feel of it would be, I think it's compatible. So.
I have one question for staff. Did I understand in the presentation that y'all said the utilities weren't ample to support another support business?
I'll let engineering comment.
So the water line is existing, shouldn't be a problem. The potential issue is the sanitary sewer. The existing line is a force main. By that area getting more developed coming along, they need to look into the integrity and the capacity of the line. That will happen at the time of permitting. We did this to the other project they're dealing with force main. They might be able to tie into that line. If not, they are not that far from gravity line in Collin. We may ask them to extend the gravity line. But first they need to study the capacity and the integrity of the existing sanitary sewer.
But if it gets developed GB,
No matter what, it needs to connect.
right,
And all of that is permitting type questions.
the issues.
And we are very aware of all the stuff that they're gonna do, because it's an unplatted, undeveloped site.
Anyone else, or anything?
Now, my only question is, I agree, it's a good project, it fits in the area, but at the same time, if you go up 1128, we have several businesses that you're describing that have gone out of business. So how do you say this is gonna make that road better, or it can handle it better than the ones that are on a very busy road that's traveled very heavily, where Chocolate Bayou is not? It's just not traveled. And even with the doggy daycare and the Sprouts, and I'm like one of the other commissioners, I travel that road very frequently, and I know what it looks like. So that would be kind of my question.
Part of that we handled in the pre-leasing process. So as we walk through the approval process, then we will then start we will start an active marketing campaign to lease out the space, and then that will start to determine the level of intensity that we would build out on the 3 buildings. So that's, I mean, it's a 4 building thing, so we can build out as we go, and then and again, all that stuff will be handled at the permitting level.
which I think kind of goes back to some of the residents' point, you're gonna increase the traffic on a road that's not really, at this time, capable of handling that increased traffic. Correct?
Right, but we can't, again, there's no legal mechanism for us to deal with the road. The question in front of the body is on the dirt, and I realize how the dirt goes can the road go, but by the same token, we are aware that the road does need some improvements. We understand, and again, we can address some of that stuff at the permitting process. And the build out also will be determined on pre-leasing to answer your direct question.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Me personally, same thing. I mean, it's GB, it's, you know, it's gonna get developed. You know, engineering questions will get covered in engineering and permitting. You know, I like a little bit of the restrictions on GB when, there is, residential abutting the property or there's other conflicts of adjacent properties. Spot zoning is an issue for me. I mean, is this all GC now, or is it GB? And so that we're gonna take, you know, an island in the middle of GB, you know, well, I mean, GC's you've got just north, yeah.
And the other one's a PUD.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm on both sides of the fence on this one, so I think everybody just votes and see where we go. So, I have any other comments or questions anymore? All right, I have a motion on the table. All in favor for the rezone from GB to GC? On this particular item, zone change application 22-28. All in favor, please raise your right hand. I see 4. All opposed? 2. Motion carries 4-2.
Thank you guys for your time.
Yes, sir. Item number 3, consideration of possible action, zone change application, zone 22-31. Public hearing, a request by Samir Gulamani and Kareem Parani, applicant on behalf of Frick Inc., owner, for approval of a zone change from general business GB district to single-family residential 4 or R4 district on 4 tracts of land totaling approximately 5.72 acres. General location to be northeast and southeast corners of McLean Road and Springfield Avenue, and northwest and southwest corners of Veterans Drive and Springfield Avenue. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Oh.
Please.
Second. All right. Staff report?
Let me introduce Patrick to deliver the staff report.
Patrick.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. The request before you tonight, as mentioned, is for zone change from general business district to single-family residential 4 tracts of land totaling approximately 5.72 acres. Location, as mentioned, is the northeast and southeast corners of the intersection of McLean and Springfield Avenue, and then the northwest and southwest corners of the intersection of Veterans Drive and Springfield Avenue. And the future land use of the property is medium-density residential. Staff sent notice in the public newspaper, and also to all properties within 200 feet, as well as the property owner posting signs on the property. And to date, staff received 1 written comment against. The main concern was about traffic concerning park residences in the area. So as mentioned, the zoning of the property is a general business that's kind of light red going towards pink. And then the surrounding is mostly our single-family residential 2. There's a little bit of R1 in your top left, and then there's 1 PUD to your top right, which is also a residential area. And looking at the future land use of the area, it's predominantly medium-density residential with some public / semi-public with school to the south, and then some low-density residential in your top left. And looking at just a historical timeline on the property, all the tracts were originally annexed into the city in 1972. All four tracts were created in the mid-1980s during the plat, which was done as a part of the neighboring subdivision that it's a part of. And to date, all the tracts have remained undeveloped. Recently, though, City Council did deny a rezone request from GB to TH Townhouse for the 4 tracts in September 2022. Kind of just looking again at the aerial map and kind of just the actual land uses on the ground, we see mostly single-family residential surrounding it, with detention areas to the south. And kind of just getting a look of the property, this is the northwest corner on Veterans. It's currently the sidewalk running down the side of Veterans. And here's the southwest corner of Veterans in Springfield with the sidewalk continuing.
Turn.
And we get a look at the northeast corner of McLean and Springfield. And then lastly, the southeast corner of McLean and Springfield. And so looking at the criteria the staff reviewed, first looking at the comprehensive plan, mentioned the land use future land use designation was the medium density residential, and the R4 is consistent with that future land use designation. In terms of the thoroughfare plan, it's currently not in conformance, as McLean is to be widened in the future. Veterans also is to be widened in the future. So those things will come in during the planning process. If these properties are required to be platted again, they may have to give a right-of-way to the property, but that will be handled in the permitting process. And in terms of the platting, they are currently platted. And then utilities, the subject property has access to water and sewer along McLean and Veterans. And looking at the approval criteria, staff found that it met all 4, specifically, as mentioned previously, the medium density residential is consistent, or the R4 requested zoning is consistent with the medium density residential. The uses permitted within that proposed zoning are also compatible with the other residential areas that are surrounding it. It's also will be consistent with any proposed changes, such as if when those roadways are widened, land will have to be given for the widening of those roadways. And staff found that it didn't substantially affect the public health, as it is residential zoning within a predominantly residential area. So just as mentioned, the proposed change, zone change request is consistent with the future land use designation. It's compatible with the surrounding uses. Therefore, staff recommends approval of proposed changes in zoning from GB to R4. And just to mention, the Commission does have the option to recommend approval of a less intense zoning district designation. A district shall be considered less intense if it is listed in section 2.4.1.2 of the UDC before the district sought by the applicant. So that would be like your R3, R2, R1 would be those ones that would be less intense. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant here for a presentation? Just
No presentation.
Just here for questions, just in case. All right. So I do have some folks here. I think maybe Dr. Harwell, who might have been the gentleman that left. Your road is PT0511, PZ0511. So I'm not sure what he wrote, so that may have been the previous item. But then I have James Hoffner. Okay, good. If you'll state your name again for the record and address, I appreciate it.
Good evening, James Hoffner. Thank you for hearing me, 3501 Civil Drive. I live in the neighborhood immediately north of the proposed changes. I exit onto Veterans daily, and the road, as designated as I think it was a minor thoroughfare, is designed to be a collector from smaller feeder streets, not a direct access for driveways from a home. The volume of traffic that's already there, it's hard enough to get out from a feeder to it, let alone if I'm trying to, somebody's trying to back out onto that road, like, that's concerning. I also have some concerns about the sidewalk situation there. This is as we've stated, a thoroughfare. It's a high volume traffic. Currently, there is space from the sidewalk to the street, but with the future plan of widening, that space will be gone. Sidewalks will be right on the edge of the street. Due south of this proposed change is a high school, so there are kids walking against a busy thoroughfare with people backing out of their driveways directly onto that busy thoroughfare. I foresee very serious problems there. Additionally, the existing space between the sidewalk and the roads on both sides for Veterans and McLean, that is currently drainage ditch on both sides of Veterans and one side of McLean. With this proposed widening, if the widening happens, which it desperately needs, that drainage ditch is going to be removed at least on one side, maybe both. And if the houses are built along those rows, the water has nowhere to go into the drainage ditch, which means it's going to back up into the neighborhoods and flood us, and I don't want to be flooded by any new development. And then, the last thing was the roads themselves. So Veterans, as I mentioned, I drive that regularly. It's already falling apart. I have submitted a complaint to the Works Department and got some potholes filled, but half the road is like falling apart. If you've ever driven on just south of Magnolia, like the road is like sliding away from the rest of it. And that condition goes all the way down. The road needs striping. More traffic is going to wear it out faster, require the rebuilding and the widening sooner. And the risk to the kids, the risk to the homes with flooding. If the city allows this, and I know we're talking, you guys are voting dirt, but if the changes here by removing the drainage that already exists, and somebody mentioned that the future plan has to deal with that, but if the drainage is gone, we all get flooded. Is the city then liable for flooding because you allow this to happen? Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
I had to get my green sheet in too.
Oh, okay. That's all right. Oh, that's why I want to make that sound. Is that for this item? Ms. Kingston, if you would state your name and address.
She happens to be here.
Yes. I had turned in the comment online as well.
Okay.
Because I wasn't quite sure which way we needed to do this. It's my first time. We live at 4610 Pompton Court in Capitola, just on the street. And that was one of my main concerns was traffic, but then also, as I was coming here, I realized we have, in the neighborhoods surrounding these plots, we have 3 full neighborhoods of kids that need to walk to that South Junior High and Magnolia Elementary because they are less than 2 miles away from the school. And bus service, if you are less than 2 miles, is $600 a year per kid. So if your kid rides the bus, which I would want to put mine on the bus because that sidewalk is the only main way for them to get to the junior high. If you want to put your kid on the bus, that's going to cost like $1,000 a year if you have 2 kids that go to that school. So the additional, with the construction of whatever's going to be built here, along with the removal of those sidewalks of the kids in these 3 different neighborhoods surrounding it, trying to get to the junior high, it really concerns me that this is not going to work out well. Plus the little pieces of land are so small, I can't imagine what you would put there if it was denied a townhome. I mean, I would consider that a kind of a tall, skinny thing. I don't see how this is going to work out. It's a small piece of land, and if you do put something there, it backs up into a brick wall. You're not going to have a yard. You're just going to have the house and a little driveway. You're going to hit the street. So I just wanted to voice my concern about a lot of the kids walk to school in this neighborhood, and we need those sidewalks. We need that extra space. So
Thank you. Another speaker, Kathy Hoffner.
Go ahead and fill out a sheet. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, thanks. Kathy Hoffner, 3501 Sebago, James's wife. Sorry I'm late turning in. It's my first time here as well.
That's
So, I'm not going to reiterate everything that's been said already, but, what stands out on my mind, I agree with everything that's been said, actually, in opposing it. there's like no space there. I'm very visual. We drove around that and we looked at that. I can't imagine what's gonna go there that's not going to have to remove the drainage ditch, whatever. And the road is pretty narrow already, no fault of somebody that wants to develop, but, you know, we've talked about, oh, maybe they can give us at least a shoulder, but if we're gonna take up the little bit of space that there is, I don't even know how it's gonna work.
Thank you. You can turn that in after you're done if you,
Okay.
yeah, if you'll just turn it in before you leave and then
Right.
state your name and address.
Okay,
We
I'm Greg
trust you.
Hawkins. I reside at 3910 Ivywood Drive. I backed right up against McLean. Okay, so I was here at the original zoning commission meeting and the city council meeting, and where everything passed. I didn't know Martin had to tell me today that it failed in the second city council meeting. So, a couple of things. One, people were talking about the construction and the drainage on the property. So if the road is wide, the city is under obligation to provide drainage for the road. They're gonna provide drainage along the side of the road. You're not gonna lose your sidewalks, you're gonna have drainage. It's gonna be underground, it's not gonna be a ditch. Okay, that's the way it works. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's one thing. The second thing is, you're not gonna lose sidewalks, okay? You're still gonna have your sidewalks. The third thing is, this thing is currently set up for general business. So are you saying you don't want homes there, but you want businesses? I mean, that's even worse to me. I want it to be residential, I don't want it to be business. Okay? So that's my concern. So, anyway, and like I say, I back right up against McLean on the back side. I'm gonna have residents on the other side. I would rather have residents behind my fence than a business, okay?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mark.
We can't,
No, he was kidding.
James Hoffner,
No, he's
No,
not
no, oh,
kidding.
no, you can't. You had your 3 minutes, unfortunately, that's it. Seriously, yeah, that's it. That's the rules. I thought you were kidding. I was laughing, so, all right, so, where are we? Staff, commission, yeah, is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against? Hearing none, seeing none. Going once, going twice. All right, staff, commissioner report, questions, discussion?
So, if I may.
Yeah,
Take a
of course,
little
your
bit of
staff.
privilege here. There were a couple things that were discussed that I want to help clarify before we get into discussions on what happens and what takes place. So with this property being on a minor collector and on a secondary thoroughfare, the engineering design criteria manual, and Harvey's, please feel free to chime in if I say something incorrectly, does not allow for direct backup connections for driveways for residential properties to be made onto those streets. So any development that takes place is gonna have some internal connection to it, or one access point that everyone comes in through and then goes to their separate areas of the residence. There's a lot of different ways that this property can be designed. There may be need for variances, but that's due to the existing conditions of the site. The existing conditions of the site and the potential need for variances should not be a key point in your determination for whether or not
zoning change.
this land should be used for residences over commercial commercial development. There was some conversation about drainage. Same comment as before, drainage has to be analyzed. That analyzing will take place at the platting of the property. Most likely, y'all will see this come forward with some P&Z variants. So you'll get a heads up about the condition that they look to parcel out the lots into before it comes forward for a plat. Again, due to the existing conditions of the property. Though they could just put one big house in there that's really long against each street, not taking that opportunity away from them to make that land development choice. I think I covered most everything. Parviz has given me a head nod that I did a good job. I earned my PE for the day.
If I may add a couple of my.
Ah, dang it, I was so close.
No, just
Big-
for clarification. Thank you, Martin, it was great. So for the access, they're only allowed to have a one shared access. However, they can come up with a design alley or else. For the drainage, again, they need to meet our detention and floodplain field mitigation requirements. The property is in 500 partially, and they need to mitigate up to 500-year water surface elevation. It's a very difficult site to develop. It's not impossible, depending on how they want to accommodate that requirement. For the sidewalk, first of all, let me back down a little bit. There are no immediate plan to expand McLean and Veterans Road for the next 5-10 years. If there is anything, it should be beyond that. Even if that happens, City of Pearland has a criteria. If you look around the town, normally you don't see any sidewalk exactly to the back of curb. There is a minimum 2, 3, or 4 feet spacing requires between that for the safety, of course. So if that happened, they need to meet that criteria at that time, or city needs to meet that criteria at that time, because we are the one expanding the road. I think that's it. Sidewalk, drainage, and the access was 3 main comments I heard. If I missed anything, I'd be more than happy to answer.
All right, commissioners, anybody?
I'd be happy to go first there. Maybe I'm the only one. I do appreciate everybody coming out, even if we have differences of opinion. A lot of great comments. For me, setting aside drainage, setting aside the roadway, the sidewalks, I realize are very important, and I don't think those are going to be touched. The backing up on the street, I'm glad you clarified that. I didn't think you could. I know when we talked about townhomes, that was a big concern that, we didn't want 47 new driveways on these 2 roads, right? And I'm making up the number. I don't remember what they were. So to hear the same thing on R4 is comforting as well. For me, if I lived on Ivywood, and I appreciate your comments because you not to minimize the other comments, but you live right behind there. And for you to say, give me homes, I don't want a laundry list. And whoever did this table, by the way, I'm going to say it in general comments again. This is a comment that the staff produces. Did y'all do? Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like that in every presentation.
Exactly.
It'd be awesome when it's a rezone.
I have another comment.
When it's a
to make.
rezone, so that'd be awesome.
Here's every single use allowed, and I want, recreation center, food storage, a food store, supermarket, department, funeral home, furniture, garden shop, auto wash. All these are allowed by right. Tomorrow, somebody could come in here, and if you think it's a lot of cars from a residential standpoint, and you're only going to get X amount of houses. I mean, you can count the houses to the just inside of there and say this is how many houses are going to be there approximately. That's a lot less traffic than a car wash would be. Not even knowing if you can get one on there, but this is a challenge, very challenge. Y'all have heard me say this too many times. I apologize. Infill spaces are very difficult. When these parcels were left vacant by the developer of that neighborhood, it was years ago, and there were different criteria for those parcels to be developed. So they left X amount of feet of depth for those, knowing, sure, we can develop this later, we'll sell it, and back then it was a quaint little town, we'll put a couple of little neighborhood services type stores there, sure. Well, what happens is the criteria changes. You've got to have X amount of feet now to come in for a drive. You've got to have landscaping buffers. You've got to have certain setbacks. All of a sudden, these parcels are almost obsolete. This is a very difficult for parcel, or you call them all one. It's very difficult. for the record, I looked at it, I wanted to put townhomes on there. I was all in favor of the townhomes. It wasn't my project, I tried to get a group to come in, but for a different reason, they backed out. I have passion for these small parcels like this, and I think we should do everything we can to help them, especially when they're, and I'm gonna use the down zoning. In my opinion, this is a down zone from general business to instead of even townhomes, which is more intense, now we're going to R4, which is, I believe, a 50-foot lot. So for those reasons, I'm for this project.
Anyone else?
I would say I'm completely for zoning this residential. And I come at it from the aspect of that property, like's been said earlier, can be developed commercially. And no permissions are even allowed, right? A car wash could come in there, whatever could come in there. And what do you wanna look at in your backyard? Do you wanna look at a townhome? Or and these are rhetorical questions, because we're not allowed to engage, or do you wanna look at a car wash? So, I mean, in that aspect, I'm for rezoning the property to residential.
Anyone else?
Sure. We don't live in your neighborhood, you do, so we do want you to recognize we appreciate your comments, and I don't want to repeat what someone has already said, but to me, R4 fits the character of the existing neighborhood versus bringing general business in. I thought you'd be more outraged about that than some more homes coming into a neighborhood. So that's kind of my perspective. We are zoning the dirt, and to me, it makes sense to put more neighborhoods, more homes in an area that's already been characterized to be a residential area versus allowing that to be general business and then anything coming in. And to everyone's point, you don't have to say so. So I don't want to harp on it, but just want you to understand the perspective of general business to that R4 is kind of saving you. So I do understand what you're saying about the drainage and the sidewalks, and to everybody's point, that would have to get addressed. They would have to meet the criteria that's set by the city. But I would think, I mean, for me, I would vote to rezone this. Thank you.
Martin, do you know what the property behind it, the single family, is that R2? Go back, yeah. And how big are those lots?
Under the PUD?
No, the Ashwood, I can't read that far away.
I think the
What-
majority of everything around there is R2 until you get to,
And what are the lot size on R2s?
There's R3.
R2s are 70.
70, and then, so R4 would be
50.
50? Okay, yeah, I'm not gonna restate what everybody else is, I agree, it's honestly a little refreshing when someone comes in and realizes the way to get out in front of something that they would rather not have in their backyard is to get in front of something that they would like to have in their backyard, so I appreciate everyone's comments as well. It's hard when you say, we have had it many times, I've bought this property before somebody developed and it's empty, and I love having the natures behind me and the trees and the squirrels and the whatever, but eventually it's gonna get developed, and I do know the city will take care of the sidewalks and the drainage, and that is definitely not anything that we could control at this level by any means, but for whatever it's worth, it's a conversation comes up a lot. We do have faith in engineering and the city to make sure that the safety of the children and anyone else use that sidewalk, because I know Turner's down there and other schools, will be paramount to the development of this project. So it won't get done if the things aren't put in place to make sure it's safe for everyone and the drainage is safe for everyone. So that's all I have. Anyone else? All right. We have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-1.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Item number 4, commission input and discussion, Newquest Properties Plan Development. Input and discussion requested by Jennifer Curtis, Meta Planning and Design, applicant on behalf of Michael Harrington, owner, for a workshop regarding a proposed plan development for a mixed-use development comprised of a hotel, conference center, multifamily, residential, entertainment, retail, restaurant, and waterfront district on approximately 93.443 acres of land, to wit, general location southwest corner of Beltway 8 and South Highway 288. I don't think we don't need a motion or anything, this is just or do we?
It's a long presentation.
No, you're not taking action.
We're not taking action.
I don't.
Normally somebody would
No,
take
no.
You're just moving to discuss.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. We're gonna move to discuss, how's that?
All right, move to discuss. So, as stated, this is just for input and discussion about this proposed plan development. We don't typically do this, but we also don't typically get over $100 million developments at the table, which have a lot of moving parts and pieces together. So we thought it was a good idea to get it in front of y'all and give y'all some time to digest on it, rather than just giving you the normal 72-hour period. Hey, here's a new development, do you agree to it? Yes, no? Bring your questions, because I'll expect a full analysis.
It's 60 pages.
It's 60 pages, front and back.
Not today, right, though? Like,
No,
okay.
today's just.
That's why we're not doing it.
I'm trying to be better. Especially when we've got, really large developments that require a bit of extra care and thought. So just to rehash some history, in case y'all don't remember from the workshop in May. In 2004, we had the Spectrum District, which got adopted. Then in 2007, 2008, Promenade Shops Lifestyle Center was established and the Bass Pro Shop was constructed. Then the land kind of sat there while Bass Pro enjoyed being the single user out there. There's been a number of different developments that haven't gotten this far, but have kind of been in the hopper a few times. We had a joint workshop in May of this year, and y'all saw that, and I will show some of the previous exhibits just so that way you can see kind of a before and after of what's changed, what's gone on. So this is what was shown at the workshop. You can see it's all just kind of grayed out or tanned out buildings. What was discussed was the entertainment area, kind of taking this quadrant, backing up to Bass Pro, having a few apartment buildings. There's discussion about a hotel conference center being in this area, and then having some highway commercial and a specialty grocer being developed in this corner. So here you can see how the plan has kind of been updated and how the plan fits into surrounding proposed developments. So you can see the Ivy District across the way. You can see
Where's Pro Bass?
Bass Pro
to the right.
Plan
is
right.
up here.
Yeah, I know, I'm trying to get everybody a point of reference.
And I included a north arrow on all of these too, just so that way y'all are all
I couldn't see it.
in line with each other.
It was blank.
All of the yellow areas are kind of pad retail restaurant sites. All of the orange areas are entertainment or fitness type uses. The red are more specialty or market or inline retail. And then the gray are the apartments. And then again, the hotel conference center kind of sitting here in the middle.
And Suba is,
Suba is,
that's under construction now.
right, they just broke ground a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So we'll zoom into the site, just so that way you can see some of these details a little better. This is kind of the central green that is being proposed and maintained from the previous workshop. You can see that they've put in some additional detail into this, oh goodness, what's the green area? Yeah,
It's
the
like a event lawn.
event lawn type thing, yeah.
Central Park.
The inline commercial and the highway commercial area really hasn't changed too much. There's been some change in the configuration for the hotel block here and for this area as well. So I'm not going to put every single comment that was in the 94 pages of analysis that I provided. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
It was only like 3 or 6 or however many. But there was a top 10-ish of topics that were provided. The first was about completing the plan to bring prior to putting the proposal fully on the table before y'all. What was submitted was just for the PD document itself. So this plan was an attachment that was not, they're still working on this exhibit. So we want to get a full design plan in to be included with the plan development document. Next was providing a cap on the multifamily units. We had a discussion, we've been in discussion with NewQuest, I would say probably every 4 weeks over the past 10 months. So we had a discussion with them about providing a cap on the multifamily on Friday. They did agree to providing a cap. We'll see what cap that ends up being with, but right now it's proposed at 1,200 units. Next was working on the phasing plan. Chris. Hey. I saw her earlier and thought, I'm going, man. Next was about the phasing plan. The phasing plan needs to provide some additional details as to what is being provided when and what guarantees are in place. Next, again, due to the size and the scale of this project, there's a vast potential for fragmentation. We want to make sure that whatever design is written into the document presents a unified design, and that we don't get developments that don't look in place and in character with the remainder of the first phase. Additionally, with plating, we have experienced the growth of Pearland Town Center and realized that spaghetti lots and flag lots may not be as good of an idea as they originally seemed. So envisioning a way to maintain this so that way we don't get that fragmentation of lots would be a benefit that we should look towards. Walkability needs to be a primary focus, especially if we have the opportunity to have additional resources within the area through either the Hotel Convention Center as proposed on the plan or through development of the sports complex across from Promenade Shops Drive. And additionally, there's just additional acreage that could benefit from being from utilizing these properties in a walkable nature instead of relying on people to get in their car to go across the street. Next bullet point talks about amenities. The entertainment district community space, that's what we had it labeled as, which is the event green that we had just talked about. The details on what is to be provided in that space are rather light, so beefing up those, as that is one of, if not the main amenity to the plan. So labeling that out and making sure that that is a quality amenity to meet the quality of the development that surrounds it. Deviations, always being mindful when we go through plan development creation that we have a good deviations table being provided, so that way we can tell what was originally allowed within the base zoning district and what is being provided for or hope to be provided for through approval of the plan development. And last, as mentioned, connectivity to surrounding developments. We have a really good connectivity happening at this corner in between the Ivy District and the proposed apartment buildings here, but ensuring that that connectivity focuses through with this walkable street and having a walkable avenue and tying in some of these inline retail areas, so that way the pedestrian has a safer feel as they cross through to get from parking over here and then wandering through the whole development. Just keeping a focus on the pedestrian, as this is a development that the hope is that people come park and visit many retail establishments or restaurants or entertainment facilities rather than just park, go to the single store and then leave. So I've talked about a couple of these design enhancements, extending the green towards 288. This is again taking that and making it more of a walkable amenity, providing for the pedestrian realm between Bass Pro Shop and South Spectrum. Specifically what I'm talking about when I say that is this is labeled out as Parkview Terrace, having this area really slow traffic down so that way you create that that safety feature and that safe feeling where you don't feel like vehicles are going to that they're going too fast or that they're cutting through, and that you have safe passage. Some of the things that we noted out in the staff report were about the bump outs, which I'm pleased to see that the plan shows, these cut through or extensions of the sidewalk, so that way you reduce the amount of area that the pedestrian has within a crosswalk. Last thing is, I think I've kind of skipped through some of these, as treating 288 as a corridor overlay district. So let's see which one of these will do it better. We have the Beltway labeled as corridor overlay district, but we skipped over 288 as identifying as corridor overlay district. And we did that because we had already established the BP 288 district, which emulates some of the qualities from the corridor overlay. But we want to make sure that the corridor overlay or the Beltway 288 gets baked back into the design plan, so that way we end up with a beautiful landscape along the frontage road, and get high quality design as we are hoping and expecting for. With all of that said, I know that was listening to a fire hose, since I'm a wealth of information, but we do have Jennifer Curtis here with Meta Design, who's the applicant for the project, and would be more than happy to have a conversation about y'all's thoughts and interest in the project, what you'd like to see, if there are any things that stick out at you as design elements that you're really wanting to focus on, so that way By the time we come back to the actual public hearing of this, then, we can hopefully have addressed or have some answers for those thoughts, comments, and suggestions.
So when I was looking at the visual, it looked like the gray portions, were those parking spaces on either side of this middle?
Jennifer, if you want to.
Yeah, I'll just,
And then I think if we can go back and let Jennifer do her presentation, since she is the applicant, but either way.
we can run from your slide, because I didn't have anything more than what you already had, except for the thumb drive that I gave you.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure that you've got an opportunity to have your voice heard too.
Oh, go ahead. I thought it was a discussion, but do
No,
your presentation.
I absolutely want to have a discussion while we're here. So I did have some kind of general responses to some of the points that Martin had made. Some of the things that we've been incorporating into the PD over the last few weeks of having meetings both with staff and with NewQuest. So I can go through those real quick, but I'm also happy to jump in and answer questions.
I'm just here. You do your thing.
Okay. Can you go back to?
I guess it's not the report presentation.
No.
Report, what's going on?
Wow, let's trash report.
You're on records.
Okay. So, I'll just kind of cherry pick a couple things. We did commit to the 1,200 unit cap on multifamily, so that's in there and that's set. We are working on the design plan, so what's in front of you is kind of the latest iteration, and I can talk about some of the differences. With that, we're also working on a phasing plan, and I can kind of walk you through what that is as well tonight, although I don't have it shown graphically here. The park space in the middle, we had some kind of minimum standards, and I'm working on refining that, so that one's kind of still in progress. Definitely also working on the street cross sections, looking at widening the sidewalks and how we can improve the pedestrian realm and what we can do for landscape buffers and the bump outs that Martin suggested are on the plan. And so a lot of that stuff we're working through, or we've already finished in the document, but it's a long document and we're still in progress. So if you have any questions about particular things, I may have already addressed it, but Martin hasn't seen it yet, and I'd be happy to talk through it. It's been a lot of revisions in the last couple weeks especially.
Yeah. I think
So-
we were up to the version 26A at some point.
Yeah, this is version 31.
Nice.
The land plan. So there's been a lot of work done, and I haven't even been doing all of it myself. They've got an architect who's doing a lot of the land plan work, and NewQuest is doing a lot of it in-house as well. So fortunately, they weren't able to be here tonight, but I'll speak to as much as I can tonight. So that's kind of all I wanted to say in response to what Martin had presented. So I'm here for questions.
You were talking about the parking?
Yeah, so on the visual where it was gray on either side and then we had the middle space, was that parking?
Yeah, so this right here and.
So yeah, this is perfect. On either side, is that parking?
That's field parking right now.
Those
Okay.
Things that look like barbells.
And so my thought process was, this kind of gives me the feel of the Memorial City has a little area, but I guess the one that sits closest to me is Baybrook area that has that green space, like that. It's pretty long space. And then, but I was thinking for purposes of parking, parking is on one side and you kind of walk to that space, and then that green space sits in the back. And so for purposes of having parking on either side, and I see that these main streets on the side, like how is that gonna work concerning the walkability?
So we're kind of coming at this from two directions. The idea that we're having is this piece of Parkview Terrace right here, and to a lesser extent North Spectrum right here, those are both the main public streets
Okay.
through the community. So those were focusing very much on how the pedestrian realm is designed in the public street space. We're not doing the typical street cross sections. We're having wider sidewalks, narrower travel lanes, on-street parking. That's all built into the infrastructure. So starting at the public streets, we're definitely doing something different than what you would see in a typical suburban neighborhood, or even in typical downtown. This is much more focused on pedestrian space being equally balanced with the space that we give to cars. Looking internally, the idea is that there's a lot of activity happening right here in this kind of event lawn space. There's supposed to be, it's meant to have like live music or, you know, yoga meetups or just all kinds of different events. These are all proposed to be restaurants that would have patio seating. There could be like a dog park. So there's a lot of ideas about what can happen here that haven't really been finalized yet, but that's always been part of the design plan, is that this is supposed to be like the focal point and everybody comes into this space. So this becomes like a pedestrian corridor that goes in between these buildings and in between these buildings, and it's supposed to feed into the hotel and conference center, which is supposed to feed into the sports facility, which is plain north, but it's to the west. So these field parking spaces would be the parking that feeds into these buildings. So you park here, walk here, and you can easily circulate in this block. If you're living in one of these apartment buildings, it's not as easy to go through the parking lot, although it's relatively short, but this public street is going to be focused on the pedestrian realm as well. So if you exit here and walk just one block, basically, you're at this park space.
Okay.
And you're part of the events.
So outside of that, once you get in here, there is no parking. That's strictly walking, is what you're saying?
Yes.
And then this green right here, this is the designated green space.
So there's kind of two. This is kind of the primary one that we're really trying to focus. You know, the restaurants are looking in. There's events that are supposed to be programmed in here. This is kind of the heart of the entertainment district. But also, Bass Pro has this existing lake right here. And they're proposing to wrap some restaurants around here and do kind of a little boardwalk.
Okay.
And look into the water and maybe have a feature and kind of make this kind of a secondary public space.
Gotcha.
With patio deck seating and that kind of stuff. So this is kind of the entertainment district, but it also feeds into this space as well, as kind of a secondary space.
Okay, and so now that you brought that up, I guess what I'm asking is, when we're talking about parking on either side and like, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, that looks to be like a road right there.
Here?
Yeah, this from here to there. Is that not a, what is that? That's a road, right?
This is a public street, yes.
Right. And so that's, I guess what I'm asking, like, how restrictive is that going to be concerning cars coming in and out and the walkability aspect, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so the idea is we're not designing that like a collector street that has wide travel lanes and no parking and it's very spread out, where traffic feels comfortable driving very quickly. We're trying to design this in a way that slows cars down, where you don't feel comfortable speeding in your car. You want to slow down because the road is narrow and there's lots of activity, and you just naturally, as a driver, slow down because you don't want to hit anything.
Right.
So we're trying to make the road less comfortable for drivers all the way down to about here, so that this public street becomes more walkable and has sidewalks and street trees and that kind of stuff.
No, I totally get it. And I like what you're saying. And I guess that's what I'm thinking in my head when I visit spaces like this. I like the ability to walk from one event center to the other. But then if I see a major or even a road where there's like traffic, then I'm kind of hesitant, or if you got kids or whatever. So I was just wondering how that would work. I mean, in terms of how busy you're going to allow that to be. Would that be a one-way? Does it cut off at some point? Like some parts in the town center, you can't enter like from a certain side. So I guess that's what I'm asking concerning the roads that are on either side of where the parking areas are.
So they are going to be two-way, but they're only going to be one lane each way, and they're going to be very narrow lanes, and there's going to be parking on both sides. So it's not going to be like a 60-foot wide collector street where you have a whole bunch of paving that you can move all over the road and not hit anything. It is a public street, and there is gonna be traffic through there.
Okay.
We're not making the entire 100 acres one pedestrian realm, like that would be very difficult to achieve. So we do have to get public traffic into the development, but the idea is that you come in and you park and you walk.
Right.
And that it's dense enough that if you park here, you can walk to the restaurant, you can walk to go do yoga, you can walk to one of the entertainment venues, because it's only a couple blocks and it feels comfortable to walk. So even if you've parked over here and walked to this venue, you can walk back or walk to a different restaurant, and it's still just a couple blocks away, and it's designed with pedestrians in mind, and it's not intended to feel like it's just a big suburban wasteland of asphalt. Yes.
As far as the apartments and stuff are concerned, since you brought up restricting traffic so much, how are they going to get to the apartments without being, how are you gonna do that without impacting the number of people and stuff that you have coming in there? I mean, you got 1,200 units, so let's just say 1,200 cars.
Right.
All right, so how are you, have y'all got external ways to get in there that
I
aren't
don't
so
think that the
impacted?
specific buildings have plans, like building plans yet. I don't know that that has been specifically studied, but I mean, all three of them are on external streets that are not as focused on the pedestrian realm, that there's, Spectrum is gonna be a little bit more traffic, and Promenade Shops is gonna be more traffic, so they have the ability to have an exit on those public streets.
Okay.
On the interior, ideally, when you have multifamily and retail and shops so close together, you're reducing the number of trips per day that people are taking because they are parked in the garage at their apartment. They can walk to the grocery store. They don't need to get in their car. That's one less trip in a car they're doing that day. So hopefully we would have less trips per day than the average apartment complex, and so there would be a little bit less of that traffic conflict.
I had a friend of mine that just moved to New York, and he was talking about the biggest thing that he had to get his head around was his trips to the grocery store, because he sold his car.
Yeah.
And, we don't think anything, this morning, I went and bought, a bunch of stuff for Thanksgiving dinner. Didn't think anything about it, loaded my truck up, brought it back and unloaded it.
And that's proposed,
Yeah.
like an Asian market or something right now?
I don't think I can disclose the exact.
No, I know.
It's on the line, but
But
it's a specialty grocery.
It's a specialty grocery store proposed.
Yeah, but, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, I'm just wondering how it's gonna be functionality as far as the residents that live there, because just like going to the grocery store and stuff, going over to Bass Pro, if they develop some way of getting over to Bass Pro without walking large distances and stuff, just carrying items and stuff.
Are y'all permanently, so on the development as a whole, I know there's a hotel conference center proposed, and then the sports multi-use facility proposed. Are you, if either or both of those do not occur, is that a deal killer per se, or if one does and one doesn't, that kind of thing? I mean, are you contingent upon those two items 100%, or, I'm not asking you to put a percent on it,
I don't want to speak for New West. That's really a question more for them.
I mean, in a perfect world, you want both those things. It drives traffic, people,
Right, I
everything.
think Newquest wants both of those things to
Sure.
happen, but the sports facility is entirely out of their control, and the hotel conference center depends to a large extent on the sports facility happening.
Is the hotel conference center proposed to be a public-private split of some kind?
I think so, yes. I don't know the extent of that. That's kind of been handled with
Yeah,
people
I'm
above my pay grade.
just curious. Okay. No, I'm good.
Question on the colors, and maybe it's my eyes. First off, I tried to get closer to read, and I can't read that stuff
It's
anyway.
fuzzy, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not just me. So the eye doctor wasn't correct. I am blind. To the left and the right of the multifamily that's more dead center north,
This one?
yes, those colors there, they're kind of a different color than the one across the street.
So that guy?
Those, what is that proposed to be?
So getting into the phasing plan, everything on this block is phase 2, which is to say that Newquest isn't kind of 100% sure on what's gonna be built there. So they're looking for a little more flexibility in that area. What this plan shows is potentially some commercial or office in these 3 blocks.
Okay.
But that's a
I didn't
very
see that.
soft prediction.
I didn't see that over there, and I guess that's, you know, that, I see the hotel color, and I see the hotels, you know, stacked on the left of those buildings, but I didn't know what those, okay, so kind of a,
To be
still
fair-
flexible.
To be fair, office isn't called out in the legend.
Right.
Yeah,
Should
that's,
have been, but I don't see it. It might have been cropped out.
no biggie, I just
Was
got
it
a little
broken?
bit, didn't know if it was my eyes missing colors or if that was the rendition. For me, I mean, this is planning and zoning and it's not about business. But what I heard loud and clear was a hesitation from the council members of, you know, $2 million worth of indebtedness annually based on the facts and the figures that were presented at one of the
Sports.
venues, the sports venue. So,
I watched that.
yeah, I guess that would be my biggest concern
That's
as a
funded,
citizen.
projected to be funded from EDC money annually.
Right, but, I mean, those are also my tax dollars, in my opinion, you know, that's half-cent sales tax that goes and funds them, and they do a great job and do a lot of things up around the city. You know, I was in parts of the conversations or overheard, I wasn't part of it, overheard the council talking about the natatorium when it was coming in the rec center and what a moneymaker that was gonna be, and I believe we're in funding of that center as well, you know, annually, so I say annually, they probably write a check more often than that. But I guess that's the biggest concern for me, number one. Number two, phasing, you know, having all this multifamily, but also realizing this is Harris County and it's also HISD, and the static that we've heard over the years from you know, multifamily being a negative was, you know, the burden on the schools and the school districts when they were full. Being HISD, I don't know that we have that resistance. And in fact, Pearland now, PISD, not Pearland, is needing kids. It's the first time, I think the gentleman in the CPAC, I fail to remember the new superintendent's name. He's part of our CPAC group. Larry Berger. He has stated that there's more seniors enrolled in the 3 high schools than there are kindergartners, and that's the first time ever. And so there is a dwindling population of young ones. So the negative stigmatism that we've had on multifamily in PISD, Pearland Independent School District, because of PISD and their, you know, their overcrowding is basically vanished. So, but from a, sorry I talked in a circle there. The multifamily, I would love it to see it phased in as a condition with some of the retail. Years and years and years ago, when somebody else came back with a project and it was loaded with 800 units, I believe, there was no phasing, and the concern was going to be that you're going to have multifamily and then they're just going to drop the rest of it. And I can give you an example of that, and that's on McHard and Cullen on the northeast corner. James Johnson came through town, and he got sent packing about 7 different times, but persistence won. Everybody else got tired of seeing him, so they granted him the multifamily that's there now with all this development that was going to happen commercial around it. And there's one office building with 1 user inside of it right now. So that's my eye doctor I went to the other day. But so that's my comments.
I can speak to the multifamily for a moment if you want in the phasing. So Newquest is definitely aware they need to balance commercial and multifamily users so that they can get that synergy. So phase one is pretty much everything right here. And NewQuest is gonna be building a lot of all the infrastructure actually, and a lot of the parking lots are gonna be built, and I believe they're building all of this, to the foundation. So basically for the tenant to come in, I think it's actually, it might be Gray Shell, I'm not sure. And then a couple of these guys are gonna be, built to the curves, they'll be built to suit. But, the multifamily is in phase one, and they do know that they need to bring that online to get, traffic in this area. So that's part of phase one.
Sure. Well, NewQuest has a great reputation for putting quality things in, and as well as, you know, moving forward with things. The current climate in this world is crazy, so, you know, I wish everybody the best of luck, and I would love to see something there.
So they're starting with one building, hoping it, you know, if it goes well, they have 2 more they can bring online.
Multifamily?
Multifamily.
Oh,
Multifamily.
yeah, no. You don't have problems with it. I mean, that's the one thing that's still, they're still moving forward in select markets.
If the interest rates continue to be as high as they are for housing, there's gotta be places for people to go, because it's gonna get too expensive to buy a
We
house.
still have a housing shortage.
Yeah.
I can attest to that because I'm crazy busy at work.
Anyone else have anything? I know
I
it's
was
getting.
just gonna make a comment, I don't really have any questions. I remember, I used to when I was working, I traveled a lot, and one of my favorite places to go was in Frisco, Texas. And I don't know if you're
I was
familiar
just there
with
last
that,
weekend.
but they took an area similar to Pearland, and they built a facility like this with the hotel and the conference center. It became highly popular because people like me could take my Uber to the hotel, and then I could walk around and do things in my off hours. I like the idea, I really think, and I know the Bass Pro Shop, and I know that whole area. I just think it would be a good addition to Pearland, and I'm glad that NewQuest is willing to take on that kind of project. So,
Wish them the best.
wish them the best.
One
Yeah.
more thing.
No.
Sorry. I was here during the town center, Pearland Town Center. That is such a restrictive PD, or PUD, I believe it is back then.
Plan unit.
I don't wish that on anybody, so I hope yours has some flexibility built in, more so than that one. That we've probably seen 20 iterations, or they've come back to the table 20 times, and we don't want that for you or for anybody.
NewQuest doesn't want that either. One
No.
of our balancing acts that we've been doing over the last few months is where's the line between enough flexibility and too much flexibility that staff and NewQuest want. So we're trying to thread that needle.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. Oh,
Thank you.
I just happened to close my minutes too soon. Sir? Oh,
He's got you covered.
yeah, thank you. Anyone have any commissioners' activity report?
Yes.
Anything? Oh,
These
No.
are wonderful.
keep them coming.
Florence, did you put
Did
these together?
everybody get one?
No, it was in the
You
email.
put these together?
I can't access my emails.
Martin took the credit.
He looked
Well,
at Florence.
Martin took the credit.
What I would ask, I mean, if you didn't get to see it, and I'll be happy to pass it to you, page 5 and 6, I believe, of the printouts. But it showed general business uses, general commercial uses in a nice pretty table. There they are. So, you know, if we're gonna go from general business to general commercial, here's the extra. You can take both of them and look at them and see the
I
differences.
think on any zone change, I think that'd be nice, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
I was gonna make that
This was our
comment.
test to see how it,
Well,
See how many.
I like to throw things in there and not tell y'all about
it
it,
picked
just to
up.
see y'all discover.
I sure did see it. I mean, it's
Easter
relevant
eggs in
to a
your
lot of
emails.
conversations.
Throw in $100 bill or something there next time.
I think
Right,
the other thing,
Find
if
that.
you have them for the other zones, maybe if we could get one email with all of them in there, if you have them already, if you have office, if you have, you know, neighborhood services, we got them. You can include them in every packet, but it'd be nice to have them as something to, you know, when we're talking about something anyways. That's my only comment.
I can see about getting y'all laminated copies just so that.
Yeah,
we
like
don't
an
have to keep-
index or glossary.
I'll have it ready for the next meeting.
You're my best friend.
Upcoming
big
joint
work.
P and Z Commission CPAC meeting Thursday, December 8th, 2022 at 6 PM at the Dolores Fenwick Nature Center. Is this the reschedule of the
Yes.
previous? Yes. I am unable to attend. I have a prior engagement I am aware of at this time. I just looked. Anyone?
That's on December the 5th?
It's a Thursday, I believe.
The
Okay.
The 8th?
Alright.
Yes,
It's
Thursday.
my book club.
Oh. When is our last meeting of the year before Christmas?
12th.
12?
Yes, we're gonna have back-to-back meetings next month.
All right, so does anyone else know that they cannot attend the Thursday CPAC meeting?
And it's at the Dolores
Fenwick.
I'll be
Not,
there.
I had it
I
on
have
my
to ask
notes.
my boss, my wife, it's her
Yeah.
birthday.
Yeah. Would you just, please, let Shelby know if you can or cannot? That way she can kind of get a head count.
And that's on the 8th, right?
Yes,
Yes.
Thursday
So
the
the
8th.
5th and the 8th, and then we're done, right?
And then, I don't know where
No.
Martin's going with his map, but I lost what our next.
So that's the 8th, is it?
Yes,
Nothing
the
after that?
Thursday.
Okay,
That's at the Dolores Center?
count me out.
Yeah.
Count you out?
He was for,
Albertsons.
for something.
Wow, Albertsons Pearland. Nice. Okay,
So I just, going back to what Henry had discussed about the zone sheets, if you're ever scrolling through the interactive map and you make sure that the
Happens
zone
every day.
layer
Yep.
is selected, you can click and scroll through the option menus here and come to zoning, and you'll notice that there is allowed uses,
Okay.
and then you can just click and it'll bring it up.
Nice.
how
Nice.
pretty.
So if you're ever going through your agenda packet and you're like, man,
Fancy,
what's
fancy.
3205
Jennifer's like, I
Dixon?
know all about this.
It's right there for you.
She already knows all that.
Martin plugs this map every.
It's great. It is really good.
He was waiting on that.
All right, so we do have our next meeting scheduled, P and Z
Yeah,
meeting,
it's
December 5th. Does anyone, that would be December 5th, yeah. Does anyone know if they would be unable to attend the regular meeting of our planning and zoning? Allegedly, oh, we're back in the conference room again.
No.
Yeah, shafted,
Yeah,
back
here.
here again.
The rest of the year.
Elevated, you got
Oh, sure.
literally.
Oh, we are on the third
Literally.
floor.
I think,
Not feeling it.
I think
Not
I'm
feeling it.
available, I'm here. Everybody else, anyone know of anything? All right, hearing none, seeing none. All right, then I'm gonna adjourn the meeting at 8:29 to be exact.